Hello, my name's Philippa Waller.
My name is Penelope Waller, and we are two of the directors at 4D Human Being.
And welcome to the 4D Human Being podcast. What's it all about, Pen?
It's all about your personal and professional relationships. It's about your communication skills, how you lead, how you work and build teams, how you are looking after yourself and your well-being, and how you are much more at choice. What do we mean by that?
Well, sometimes we can get a little caught in patterns in life and we can all be a little bit on our automatic pilot. So 4D Human Being is all about helping us get back to choice and being a four-dimensional human being. And your fourth dimension, of course,
is intention. So whether it's about your impact, your leadership style, your team dynamics, whether it's about your well-being, whether it's about your communication or your presentation skills, anything that involves human beings interacting with other human beings, 4D Human Being are here to help.
we're going to take a deep dive and look at some tools, insights, theories that are going to help you go from a 3D human doing to a 4D human being so that you can happen to the world rather than the world simply happening to you.
Good afternoon. Well, hello, we're back together.
We are very in the red.
Yes, we're all red.
And we're going
today.
to talk about resilience today. So red resilience.
Red resilience. And maybe that was sort of subconscious, Phil. We're like, come on with the red.
Yeah, action.
Yeah. Nice to be back. I loved your podcast on anxiety.
What, the old solo flying?
It was really
like
good.
Sort of Biggles.
Well, yeah, it was Biggles. Do you know what I thought as I was listening to it? I mean, I really liked it. I really enjoy our podcast. And I think, better together.
Always, Pen.
But what I noticed was that you were really able to structure and stay on track without me sort of dipping in.
Well, I'd say the same to you. Yes, it's interesting. You said it felt structured.
Yes.
It's interesting, isn't it? The difference. I mean, that's a whole other podcast for us to talk about. The difference between one's own internal experience of thinking and what it can actually sound like. Because it clearly landed, there was enough of a structure. But of course, my head's going.
Yeah, you always felt. Always
going from one thing to another. January's not terrible. Well, this is what I want to talk about.
I'm not saying it's been my favourite month.
Yeah.
But I think it's the story that people say about January that makes us feel like.
This is what I want to talk about. So.
No one's come out with. So I've been trying to organise drinks with girlfriends.
Yeah.
And I have to say, it has been a bit. It's January.
I don't mind when there's a story that gives us an excuse to do what we really want to do. It's a bit like, for some people, COVID was a bit that. I can't go out
because it's January.
I think that's useful. We can call it a cheat, but sometimes we need to take the cheats to set the boundaries. But I'm whole thing about cheating. That we all, I'm cheating really because it got cancelled. Take the cheat.
Yeah.
Anyway,
totally.
That's a whole other topic.
Yeah.
But the January narrative.
Yeah.
Where I cannot think of anybody I've met who've said, well, it's a time for rejuvenation.
It's
January. Let's kind of, really kind of get our ducks in a row. Cannot wait for what the year brings. It's all been, it's January. So long.
Poor January.
It's poor January.
Our sister celebrates her birthday in January.
Yeah.
And I have to say, it's a bit of a rubbish month.
Yeah, it's a bit of a rubbish month because you're sort of like, just get it done. People say it's a long month. It's a poor month.
Yeah.
It's a tired month.
Yes, all of those things.
And I'm like, poor January.
Yeah.
What about it's a sort of it's almost like a collecting month. It's a gearing up.
Well, it could be
month.
A restart month. It could be a sort of a rest and healing month.
Yeah, it could be a kind of like pondering.
We got to rebrand January.
Yeah, rebrand January.
Yeah,
definitely.
I agree.
But more importantly, for listeners out there, while we're talking about January, this is the wider topic, isn't it? Of just be careful the narrative you're given.
Narrative.
It might not be you might be thinking, it's so cozy.
Well, people who are not in the sort of advertising, PR, comms world, but Alistair Campbell of the Rest is Politics podcast says this a lot. People who are not really in that world, they sort of roll their eyes at the you've got to control the narrative, you've got to change the narrative. But I'm telling you,
narrative.
If we could rebrand January, I mean, who knows what we'd do to the mental health of the nation?
Do you remember those wooden launch things in the gym in the sort of 70s and 80s. They were like springboards to jump over the boxes. And we think about, I mean, that age is
my God.
Or like the trampettes.
They didn't have much give in them, though, did they, Phil?
I mean, health and safety.
How we got over those boxes of horses or whatever they were called.
Exactly. But I think we should sort of rebrand January as more like a sort of potentially a trampette or a springboard.
Yeah.
Anyway,
that's not what we're talking about.
But just, although it does help with what we are going to talk about.
Yes, but anyway, good to be back. I mean, it's been a slow start to the year, hence why you had to fly solo last time. But I'm fully back.
Can I just rebrand what you just said there? A slow start.
Well, in a good
to the
way.
Year. Well, I think what you mean is busy elsewhere.
No, I tell you what, I don't mean a slow start to the year. I mean a delayed start to the year, and then like an absolute hurricane of activity.
That's what I mean. But in a really exciting way. We've got some really interesting pieces of work coming up where people are really looking into models that we absolutely love. If you have never put your organisation or team through Spiral Dynamics, this is the moment to do it. With everything you see going on in the world, you want yellow second-tier leaders in your organisation. You will change the game.
And we will definitely come back to Spiral Dynamics later this year. We've got 3 episodes. So if you search Spiral Dynamics under our podcast, you will find 3 episodes on it. We will definitely come back to it later in this year and next year, because things that are happening geopolitically are absolutely perfect.
And market, business-wise.
Perfect to understand through the lens of Spiral Dynamics. But we're not looking at that today. We are looking at another topic that we get asked about an enormous amount from our clients, which is change. Dealing with change, understanding change, how we behave in change, and leading others through change. So we are going to the plan is to do 4 episodes, although, you know me and Phil, we can chat to the cows come home. So
I think there's so much in this first one.
We're going to do 4 episodes talking about change. And the topics are going to be?
The topics are going to be, first of all, we're going to look at resilience. Mm-hmm. That's today. Then we're going to look at the switch model. There's a book by Chip and
Dan Heath
on the switch model, which is really leading through change. That's sort of thinking about the process through
how we
change,
get motivated,
and what often gets missed out and why it doesn't work, including communication, of course. We're then going to look at edge behaviours. This is work from systems thinking. What kind of gets in the way, what shows up when we're on the edge of change, but we're maybe resisting it. And also that mindset shift. So how we can get over the edge.
I had a really good example of edge, didn't I, the other day in the gym, where I had extra weights on the stack.
And you thought,
I literally couldn't move my legs. And then you did it. And I thought, it is possible.
And then you did it.
I did it. And we don't really realise these what we call these edge behaviours, that are the things that can get us to change and do things.
Well, edge behaviours is both the behaviour that shows up to resist, like asking questions and,
or making jokes,
or blaming, or saying it's never going to work. And also within edge work is also what helps you get over it. Sometimes it's exactly that. It's the buddy at the bottom of the mountain.
Says, which is also about mindset, and we know this from loads of research. So we'll talk about that.
Mountains look much shorter and easier when you've got a buddy next to you.
Exactly,
it's the weirdest research.
So we'll talk about that on episode 3 of this.
And then the 4th one is adaptability, that kind of improvisation mindset, and action. Doing is our friend.
It's
when
the
it comes
quickest
to
way to change.
We can think our way into paralysis when it comes to change, can't we? And boy, are we good at it.
So resilience, Phil. So the first thing I want to say on resilience, and you are an absolute expert on this, being a psychotherapist, but the word resilience often
I had to work on my own.
We've all had to work on our resilience. But the word resilience comes up a lot, I'm sure, with your clients, but also in the corporate world, very linked to change, but generally it comes up an awful amount. I want a programme on resilience. We get asked that a lot. And I think perhaps we should rechange what we think that word means, because if we talk about resilience, so let's imagine in manufacturing, I remember this from my sort of chemistry and physics days, Phil, back at school. If we talk about resilience in materials and metals, we think about the materials being really, really tough, rigid, strong, resistant. I think that's often what we think of when we hear the word resilience. So we need to reframe it.
There's such a paradox here, and so much of vertical development, because this is partly what we're talking about here. We're also sort of looking at horizontal development, which is sort of different ways of doing things or communicating. But there's also the vertical development, which is shifts in our growth, if you like. And what can be challenging is that when we can't, because we're so used to doing things in the way that we're doing them, it's very difficult to imagine that a new way will work. Now, resilience is such a good example of this. So first of all, what is it? Well, actually, it isn't the ability to armour up, be tough and fight. Exactly. Brace. I always think of the aeroplanes, brace. It's the ability to be flexible and adapt and bounce back. And one of the big things that I have experienced myself and see it in clients is we can start by thinking, I just want to feel good all the time.
Yeah.
I don't really want things to change, probably the first thing, which is impossible because life is change. And then I just want to be able to deal with it perfectly every time and not feel anything difficult. And then there's the frustration when we're caught in the same patterns. Where we actually start to notice the growth is where it would have taken us a week to rebalance, it takes us 5 days, and then it's 3 days, and then it genuinely gets shorter and shorter until you find yourself within 5 minutes of something suddenly the news comes in or you get an email that really pushes your buttons. You've got the tools to within 5 minutes, not change that, but to get yourself back. And just to finish that, when I hear people have said it to me, I've had clients say it, that I'm very resilient, what they'll usually then add is a synonym of strong.
Yes.
And actually, these are usually people who are braced and spinning a lot of plates, incredibly stressed and very frustrated that they keep finding themselves in this pattern. But they would identify as resilient.
Yes.
And in therapy, of course, we talk about the difference between a tree that's alive and able to blow in the wind and the storm comes and it can move and it's flexible, and a tree that is dry or dead and it just breaks. And so that's probably the analogy we look for. And just to say on this, what's going back to my kind of vertical growth model, what's so difficult about this is we've learnt to armour, and that feels like that's what's getting us through. And the idea of softening feels so paradoxical.
It feels too risky.
And like it's not going to see you through. It's going to be weak.
Yeah, and everything you're describing, what's so interesting about this, everything you're describing is about the self. The what's going on with us. And I think often with resilience, we can think a couple of things. We can think that we don't want the stuff that's happening out there. That's the stuff that has to change.
Or the other person.
And I mean, the first thing to say is that change is constant. Change is constant. And the second thing is that we will work quite hard to stop the things coming at us or complain about it or whatever it might be. And exactly as you said, sort of think about that wall between us and the world as it's happening. And I really understand it, because you want the other thing
it's the fortress.
Yes, you want the workload or whatever is, or the speed. You want that to stop. And you can't. Mainly, very occasionally, maybe you can, but you can't really stop it. So you
can't stop the world.
You can't stop the world. So you have to have to pull it back here to the self.
That's right.
And I think that's the first thing to think about when we think about resilience. It's not bracing against something and trying to stop it.
It's okay.
It's happening. How can
That's right. It goes back to the Frankl quote, doesn't it? Between, I'm going to totally paraphrase it now, but between event and response, there's a gap, and in that gap is our ability to.
It's our freedom and our choice.
It's our freedom and our choice, exactly. Which really is the core of 4D human being. So one of the first things to think about is that self-awareness. Now, we'll touch on the nervous system. I did talk about this in the last podcast I did, my flying solo anxiety, which has such strong links to this. So definitely worth listening to that in terms of how we can get caught in anxiety, which will often be part of change and also part of resilience, ability to become more resilient. But in terms of self-awareness is, of course,
what your level of tolerance is.
Yes, isn't it? Really, exactly. So we're sort of going to bring together self-awareness in the window of tolerance.
Do you know what I remember from when I first led teams, way back in my early corporate career? And I'll mention this just if it resonates with anybody in terms of resilience. And I remember some team members, we were very busy. I remember some team members, having real difficulty and different work had to get moved around. And the word fairness used to come up a lot in the team around it. And, they're not, they should, I am, And at the time, I guess because of my lens at the time and, I'm managing the workload and trying to get everything done, I kind of got caught in that and thinking, that's right. Come on, you need to. And actually, of course, now with my lens on the world, it's an understanding that it is madness to think that every single person on this planet at every single moment in time has exactly the same level of resilience, tolerance, ability to do things. And I think we can get caught in that in terms of that idea of it's not fair.
And this is such a good point.
It's just something we have to get rid of, because if otherwise we are almost doubling down on the anxiety.
Would you know what, really importantly, and you and I can really talk to this, with historically very different windows of tolerance. And let's just explain that quickly, because then I'll respond to what you said. So the window of tolerance is really, if you think about a window, it's the space in which I can cope. Yeah. It's the coping space. And if we're impacted by a lot of change, we'll have two responses. We'll go up and out of the window into hyper. It's too much. Overwhelm, stress.
It's not fair. Get Bob to do it.
Yeah, reactivity, defense, blame, all of that work, which ties in with our ego work. And if even that's too much, and this of course is the nervous system, when even it's too overwhelming, it's beyond even having a reaction to it, we can drop down
out of the window. So think of it of going out down, the bottom of the window of tolerance, or out the top of the window of tolerance.
So at the top we're going hot red, reactivity, stress. Think about what that does to your body, to your relationships, etc. Your brain is full of cortisol. When we drop out, because we are so overwhelmed, the nervous system is going to shut down. We go into hypo reactivity, and that's when we go numb, shut down. We won't answer the phone. We'll
I don't want to talk to anybody.
Yeah. So we can think of that as cool, and we can think of the top as hot. Now, what Pen you just talked about, exactly that, is we have different sized windows,
and at different times.
Exactly. So it's moving anyway, and for different events. So some things, I was always much better at dealing with the big things, like a pandemic. Bring me a pandemic. Yeah. Right, let's sort it out.
Yeah, but finding the way to an unknown place when you're under time pressure, your window of tolerance might go in that moment,
or even the sort of irritation with an estate agent recently. Whereas a pandemic feels more manageable. I mean, so we'll all have different responses to different things at different times, and that's the size of our window.
And this is self-awareness.
This is the self-awareness. Now, what Pen just mentioned, of course, is it can be very difficult if you let's say you've got an organisational change going on, or there's redundancies, and you seem to be coping with it fairly well. You've had a bit of a word with yourself, you've regulated.
You're meeting your deadlines.
You're cracking on, even though there's uncertainty, and you're managing fine. And you've got one or two colleagues who are completely all over the place. They're breaking down, they're talking about it all the time, they can't really function, they're not doing their work. And you might look at them and think, well, hang on a minute, I seem to be dealing with this. Why aren't you? Yeah. And I'm not talking necessarily about being someone's boss and team member, even just peer to peer.
And also because it may well not be manifesting externally as I'm feeling really stressed. I can't do it. It may be manifesting as gossiping or just sort of pulling away from the desk and not doing stuff or not communicating with people.
So it looks irritating.
It doesn't look like stress.
Yeah. And actually, just to add to that, I mean, there's so many pieces to this. Of course, I've worked with clients who look cool as a cucumber on the outside. Inside, they are absolutely overwhelmed with stress. So we never know what's going on with someone else. And the other side, the full other side of that coin, which is also super interesting, which I come across a lot, is people who recognise that they're completely overwhelmed and they're terrified or can't cope, but they see Bob managing very well, and they feel huge shame about the fact that they are feeling what they feel. So then they armour and try to cope with it, even though they're overwhelmed.
And
you look at the complexity.
So much. And the really sad thing about that, I mean, there's so many things about it, but the sad thing about it is that, of course, this is all going on in the cognitive part of our brain, where we're trying to understand, I'm not able to do this. Look, Bob's doing that over there. I should be able to do that. And you're trying to sort of rationalise yourself into feeling more resilient.
Yeah.
And yet it's the body.
And that's what we talk about in the anxiety podcast. That's right.
Is in overwhelm.
That's right.
And you're sort of doubling down on it.
Yeah. So
word from us at 4D Human Being. If you're enjoying the show, please do click follow so that you can have the 4D Human Being podcast instantly in your feed. And we'd love it if you liked and reviewed us. Let us know what you think.
Please do think of 1 or 2 people that you could share the 4D Human Being podcast with. Somebody who would really benefit from the content you're listening to right now.
Back to the show. First thing on resilience is, if you have been moved out of your window of tolerance, the first thing to do is not the PowerPoint or presentation that you feel you should be
it's
doing.
recognising you're out of it, isn't it?
It's recognising you're out of your window of tolerance and to help yourself back in it. Because all the time that we're trying to operate from outside our window of tolerance, we are quite literally making the situation worse and worse.
We cannot be resilient to the incoming traffic.
Exactly.
We cannot.
In fact, we are becoming less and less resilient because our capacity bucket is just absolutely full in the background. And now we're trying to, so you think, well, I should go on this offsite or I should do this work project. And then one person says something to you quite innocuous, but your capacity bucket is so full, you snap at them and now you've got a whole other problem.
And you're not really doing yourself any favours by continuing to operate outside of your window of tolerance, because you're probably not going to do the best in terms of your relationships. You're probably not going to be able to do the workload, and you're not going to be able to make good decisions, all of these things. So the first thing is to recognise it, and possibly some of those first signals are probably in the physical dimension, aren't they?
And I really want to double down on your fairness, Pen, because I don't think we can bang that drum enough. That it can feel so unfair that, let's say we have got more resilience for whatever reason, the culture we were brought up in, the way we were brought up, what we learned along the way, the amount of self-development we've done, luck of our genes, who knows, or the context we live in, that you've got more resilience. We really get it, that it can feel very unfair that you're doing twice as much as, Bob or whoever over there, because for whatever reason, their window of tolerance isn't as big in this context. That's part of the self-awareness raise. You can,
you can judge and be angry.
Judge and fight it all you like, but you are quite literally talking about biology here. And if their window of tolerance cannot take as much as you, that is just how it is at this point. And it's, it's like saying to a toddler, well, I'm carrying the big backpack. Why don't you? And it's not to denigrate someone as being a toddler. It's just the ridiculousness of asking somebody else to hold as much as you, who literally can't do it.
Yeah.
So
and people are not generally poorly intentioned.
No.
And particularly through change.
No. And what this also means is you taking responsibility for what you're able to put in your backpack. Just because Bob can't carry as much in his backpack, that doesn't mean you carry 3 times the amount that you're able to cope.
It's interesting.
It's you taking responsibility for what you can
It really makes
carry.
me think of the military. I've been reading lots of stories recently about the military and sort of heroic acts. And I can imagine that, obviously, I'm sure they are taught huge amounts of ownership and responsibility in terms of their own actions and what they're carrying and all that kind of stuff. But I can also imagine a really deep understanding of exactly this. One of your colleagues is injured or whatever it might be, you got to pick up the slack. I can really imagine that being really strong. And of course, we're not in those kind of critical situations in the office, but the concept is not dissimilar in terms of how we're working in a system. It's recognising what people can and can't do.
And I'd add to that, which is what I said at the beginning, sort of, I can find that in a crisis, I can deal with a lot more.
Yeah.
But of course, what happens in a crisis is you're not thinking about, I must get that puff pastry from, that you're dropping a lot of other things as well. So,
that's true.
Okay.
So first thing is recognizing when you're out of your window of tolerance, because in order to increase your resilience, which is the question we are asked all the time, how can I and my team increase our resilience? If you want to increase your resilience, the very, very first thing you need to do is get back in your window of tolerance.
Yeah. So there's a couple of things I would say on that. One is to make a list of all the change that's going on in your life, because often we don't recognize how many other things are going on. So you'll think, well, why am I so stressed at work? And then you go, we're redecorating the house. One of my parents is unwell. My child's not happy at school. I mean, you start
start listing what's going on, your resilience has already been absolutely bashed through a number of other things that you've probably normalized. So the first thing is to sort of actually look at outside of yourself and list what's going on. And then the second thing, as you say, Penelope, is to come right back to the self and ask yourself, what is going on here? Physically, emotionally, mentally.
Am I outside of my window of tolerance?
Am I outside of my window of tolerance? And what does that mean physically? You know, my heart races up. I'm feeling like I'm going at high speed. Emotionally, I'm irritated. And cognitively, I'm trying to, squeeze my calendar into a ever increasingly smaller space or whatever it is.
One way I was taught about this when I first learned about this model is, unless you are somebody who, for whatever reason, is sort of consistently operating outside of your window of tolerance. So you've for whatever reason, you've ended up in that hypo or hyper state more than you are in your window of tolerance. And some people do find themselves there at periods of time. If I'm going to park those people for a moment, if generally speaking, you're working within your window of tolerance, which is most of us, and then you dip in and out of it. The way that I was taught to think about this was stop, take a breath, and ask yourself, am I behaving in the way that is most familiar to me in this moment? Yeah. And if the answer to that is no, there's a very good chance you've dipped out.
Yeah. Okay, good. Love it. So now you've become aware, notice the behaviours, notice that you're outside of your window of tolerance. Find your recovery routine. So this is the
main thing around resilience.
This is the main thing around resilience. So it's an interesting one.
It's not bracing.
It's not bracing. It's not knowing more.
It's recovery.
It's not having more certainty in the outside world. It's not getting other people to work. It's coming to your internal system and finding your recovery mode. Close your email down. Change environment. Move location. Take those calming breaths, breathing out for longer than in. Call the friend, whatever it might be. What is your recovery routine? This is an absolute game changer on so many levels. Firstly, you're doing those things that's calming your nervous system. Secondly,
getting your brain back online.
And you're signaling to yourself, we've got a plan. And this is a huge thing in the military. I love that thing in the military. I read this recently. When something terrible happens out there in the field, they don't just let their body react. They have to speak out loud. They have to say what's happening. So, man down, shot in the leg, radioing in to call, for help, backpack down. So they're talking to themselves, which is engaging their prefrontal cortex and telling themselves that they have a plan. Now, the nervous system will be going like absolute billio. Yeah. But what those few seconds do, this is how they're trained, is to very, very quickly signal to the body, we have a plan, we're in control. Isn't it? It's so fascinating, Pen. So it's the equivalent of that. Yeah. If you've got your recovery routine, you stop, you have to stop what you're doing and say, right, I'm going to take 10 minutes, I'm going to go for a walk, and I make myself a cup of tea. I'm going to write down the 3 things that I can do immediately, and then I'm going to call Penelope, and I'm just going to check in with her if there's anything that she might be able to pick up or, she can support me with.
Well, I'm going to double down. I'm going to double down on that, Phil, because I've been a bit obsessed with a series called Black Doves on TV, where I think I'm going to be like, I told my gym instructor.
Well, Pen, your resilience will be fine because you're a secret spy.
I'm like a sort of ninja. I told my gym instructor that my goal is to be some sort of ninja.
They must be so resilient, though.
Well, no. So this is what the CIA agent said. So it was so interesting. It was this little clip I saw, and he said,
"Do you think they recruit women in their 50s?"
Well. You never know. So what he said was, there's kind of myths around what you want top of your list as a CIA agent. So you're in a room, stuff's going down. He said, it's not about being the most intelligent person in the room, and it's not about being sort of primed and, exactly. He said, the question you always, always ask yourself is this: am I the calmest person in the room? That's it. I know, that's what I thought. That's what I thought, Phil.
So actually, all of this work around resilience is to get you to a place where CIA. I know. I'm not thinking you're working for the United States rather than Britain. Sounds more dramatic.
There's some hidden benefits, but yes. So absolutely, we want to really, really think about that recovery back to, I think you call it sort of homeostasis.
Yeah, we're always trying to get back to homeostasis. So the reason your body is sending you these signals, thirsty, hungry, is because it wants you to drink or have something to eat. It's the same with over activation. It was signaling to you, do something.
Yeah.
Get us back to stasis. There's some danger.
And I think when you understand this, I'm not saying it's easy because it's not easy, but I think when you understand this conceptually, you realise that your resilience is within your power, which I think is, hugely exciting when you recognise that. And the other thing I'll say, which I know you're going to go on to, is don't kind of beat yourself up. Don't criticise yourself that, perhaps you didn't show up brilliantly at work because you were in that sort of heightened state and you weren't feeling resilient when somebody asked you to do an extra report. Don't beat yourself up about it, because the idea of building our resilience is all about over time, gently reducing the length of that recovery time.
Absolutely.
That is what resilience is about.
That's absolutely right. It's quite simply, how quickly can you get back on the horse? That really is what it's about.
And if you gain 5 seconds each time, you're doing it.
And it's never too late. And you know what one of your double down wins can be is to go back to that person and say, I want to check in with you. I felt overwhelmed in that moment. There was a lot going on. That wasn't how I wanted to show up, and I wanted to let you know that. You get double points for that. It's never too late to go back. The word that I just wrote down as you were talking was prioritise. And I think that was one of the big breakthroughs to become more resilient, is to almost gamify what you prioritise, and that you stop prioritising the pieces of work or the list or even cooking the dinner. You prioritise your internal state. So even if you've rushed in, you've got to get your kids some food and you're in a heightened state, that becomes the priority. Yeah. You take 4 minutes at that point to get that back, and you can cook the baked beans in 4 minutes time. That has to become the priority.
And sometimes the priority feels counterintuitive. Yeah. Sometimes the priority has to be laptop down, walk out the room for 5 minutes. And for any of you out there who've had moments when, let's take an example of having to prepare a PowerPoint at the last minute. Any of you out there who have just found that so stressful, so difficult, just couldn't quite get the pieces to all fit. It's taken you hours. We talk about this a lot. And then a week later, you're asked the same thing and it takes you like 10 minutes. We talk about being in flow when it just feels easy, whereas sometimes it feels like wading through mud.
Yes.
This is all about your resilience and your window of tolerance.
And recognising when you're out of it.
And it's such a waste of our time. You'd be much better off pulling out for 10 minutes, resetting and coming back rather than fighting the PowerPoint.
Do you know what that reminds me of? It reminds me of acting rehearsals. That when either as an actor, when I was in rehearsals or when I was coaching actors, if you start a speech and you're totally off, and you're not in it, and you're just making loads of errors, and it's not real and you're just not in it.
Yeah.
When I first used to start coaching people, they would just want to keep going. And actually the learning is you have to stop.
Yeah.
Because you don't want to keep practicing the way of being that you don't want. You're much better off walking away and coming back to it. And it's the same. Yeah. That's not the muscle that you want to be practicing. You want to stop, walk away, come back to it another time.
So we would offer, in terms of resilience through change, probably your number one thing to focus on is your own internal window of tolerance, recognizing when you're out of it, strategies to get back into it. That really is your number one. I guess our number two, going back to what you said about prioritizing, is thinking about sort of control.
Yeah.
Versus what we can't control.
Yeah.
I don't know how much time we waste on things we can't control, but
a lot.
That's definitely something sort of more cognitive to think about.
Yeah. Yeah. So, part of this is, of course, is about letting go. I mean, that really is, interestingly, we touched on spirals, and this is something that we'll talk about definitely in another podcast, because the shift that we're looking at, while we've got people at all levels of development, the shift that we're looking at the moment from what we would call green to yellow is the frustration when everything doesn't fit.
Yeah.
Everything's not right. Everyone isn't happy, or everyone hasn't got equal, whatever it might be, resources. And part of this is that leap to being okay with it not being okay.
Yeah.
And that's a huge thing, whether
living in the ambiguity.
Living in the grey, being okay with that uncertainty. I mean, it's a huge part of resilience. And actually, it's a much more realistic way to live.
Yeah.
Because, of course, we can't control everything. It's actually, I think I talked about this in the anxiety podcast 2 weeks ago. It's a trick of that part of our brain that is convinced if it works hard enough and does enough, we can lock it down and control and know everything. And it's a total trap. It's an absolute myth. We're much better off with control, as you say, taking a moment and really looking at what we can and can't do. And, we know this from the sort of spheres of influence models of what we can influence, what we can't. But actually, part of this to really map it into the window of tolerance is all very well knowing this. Most leaders will have done some kind of model on your sphere of control or influence.
In terms of your own personal...
Yes, in terms of strategically.
Oh, yeah,
I'm
what
sure
you can influence in the organisation.
What I can influence in projects or organisation or not. Like, you'll all know a map like that. But what we aren't taught is, okay, well, now I know that I can't control the redundancies being made at the organisation. I'm still left with this
feeling.
I'm still left with this feeling.
That's right.
And what we're not taught is how to the window of tolerance of how do I learn to sit with this and soften into it? I know it intellectually. I think everybody knows it intellectually. Yeah.
But emotionally and physically.
We don't know what to do with ourselves. Yeah. And then we're just in anxiety and stress.
Yeah.
So part of this resilience is turning back, as you say again and again, Pen, turning back to the body and saying, okay, I know that I can't control that. I'm outside of my window of tolerance. I need to regulate. And then, of course, what you and I would say is now go to what can I do?
Yeah, exactly. So a really nice model in that space is the CIA model. I'm all about CIA today, Phil. Yeah. Control, influence, adapt. Yeah. So what can I control? So like you said, I can control cooking some beans for my kids. I can control that.
Yeah, exactly.
What can I
control when I choose to do that?
What can I influence? So what are useful conversations to have? And then adapt, which I think sometimes is the hard one, is the what do I simply have to adapt to because it's outside of my control.
Yeah. So really,
and I think often we don't always get things in the right buckets.
Absolutely. So really notice, and we've all been there, we can get caught on this for weeks and months and sometimes years. Catch yourself if you think or say, I've got no choice. They should. I've got no choice. Yeah. I can't, I have to. And that is your nervous system absolutely in overwhelm and going to rigidity, that the only way through this is to keep going in the state that I'm in. I've got no choice. I have to cook these baked beans right now. My children will starve. That's where it takes us though, isn't it? Like, I've got no choice. Of course, what you do have a choice about is turning that hob off, taking 2 minutes, regulating, breathing slightly differently, giving your kids a, piece of bread or a whatever carrot and say, just give me 2 minutes. What can you do? So in that control, influence, adapt, and I would also say that A is also action. What is possible here? And of course, action is really your friend in resilience.
Particularly, I think if you've gone into the hypo state out of the window of tolerance, which we don't often recognise as a stress state because you can confuse it with calmness because it's that sort of shutdown. Yeah. And when we've gone there, everything kind of freezes. And then we're probably trying to think our way into decision making or whatever it might be. And actually, action can often be our best friend. Just get up and do something.
Literally anything. Yeah. I mean, just do something to completion, whether it's sort of tidy up that cutlery drawer or fix something or clean your car or something that has a completion. In Gestalt psychotherapy or psychology, we talk about that the Gestalt is the circle, that completion, and that can be very, very calming for our nervous system to go to a completion, finish a creative project, whatever it might be. And probably one of the last things to say on this is how we can really almost, there's a couple of things on it. One is, how do we really come back to tolerating the uncertainty and the unknown? And the other one that I think can be incredibly useful, it goes back to our conversations around stoicism, is all the time that we are bracing against change, there's a lot of fear in there. And it can be quite an interesting exercise to come back to something really foundational around, okay, what if it was me and the people I loved sort of sat on the ground and everything's gone crazy, everything's kind of broken down, or everything has gone wrong, let's say.
What's going to be important?
What's going to be important there? And it sounds sort of slightly sort of apocalyptic, but it can be very grounding to come back to some core values. Because what's really interesting about resilience and change and anxiety is we can get so caught in the spiral and spinning of need to achieve, need to be good enough, need to, hold on to my job, or need the promotion, or need to make everything, amazing in the company, or grow the company, whatever it is. And yet, if you were asked really what's important to you, it would be your friends and family, your integrity. So we disconnect from our values, don't we?
Yeah.
So something about the softening back into what's really important to you, who you want to be, that can really help in resilience.
Yeah.
Of, I'm not my job title.
Yeah.
I'm a human being who's right here, right now, and I care about how people feel, and I care about how I feel. And that is so grounding.
Yeah. So I think for me, some of the key messages to think about with resilience, and it is a really, really big topic, is first of all to think about it more as a softening and a flex rather than a control and a rigidity. And even that as a concept and a mindset is probably something we all need to do a bit more of. The second one is to really think about resilience in terms of your own personal window of tolerance. And you can also think about resilience in terms of managing others by recognizing that their windows of tolerance are different.
Nice.
And then the third one is those strategies to reduce our recovery time so that we can get back to feeling resilient. So that might be, as we've said, taking time out, breathing. It might be reprioritizing, using the control, influence, adapt model.
Friend.
Lots of different ways that we can get regulated and get back into the window of tolerance. So understanding what resilience is, it's flex, not rigidity. Secondly, understanding that concept of the window of tolerance. And thirdly, getting yourself back into that state and not trying to do too much when you're out of that state, I would say.
Yeah. And as you talk, I can really feel my body is really softened. And it makes me think of the Andrex toilet paper advert.
What with the puppy?
In the UK. Soft and strong and very long.
Very long.
And that is the best mantra for resilience. Soft, strong, and very, very long.
Probably an important word when we're thinking about toilet paper, Phil. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of the 4D Human Being podcast. We hope you enjoyed the show.
Do take on board some of the insights, tools and tips, because every time that you try something new to get back to choice, you are making a vote for the you that you want to become. And I love that phrase, Pen.
I do too. And please do share this episode with somebody that you know would really benefit from the lessons and learnings we've been chatting about today.
And of course, if you're interested in more from 4D Human Being, do get in touch. We run workshops, trainings, online, in person, conference events and keynotes. We've got the 4D On Demand platform for your whole organisation. And we do have a free Essentials membership where anybody can sign up for absolutely free to access some of our insights, tools and tips. So do get in touch with us if you'd like to hear more. We cannot wait to hear from you and to carry on the conversation.